Hey everyone, we are back at WITI, Women in Technology International, and we are now sitting down with Lauren Maffeo.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on to the show.
Thanks, it's a pleasure.
And we are going to talk about GetApp.
Yep.
We're going to talk about the importance of enterprise and understanding what all these different softwares are doing and which ones are awesome, which ones are not so awesome, because there's so many of them. And you're like the TripAdvisor for SaaS, right? For enterprise software.
GetApp is, yes. So
Yeah.
the idea behind GetApp is that if you're a smaller mid-sized business owner and you need HR software to manage your team, the idea with GetApp is that you would go to getapp.com, you would read LinkedIn verified reviews of different cloud HR software tools, you would read reviews that people have left of those products, and then you can filter to get the features you need, to find tools that support which operating system you prefer, and once you filter for what you need out of software and then read reviews, the idea is that you would use GetApp to compare products and ultimately find the best HR software for your business.
Is it specifically for HR software?
HR is one of many markets. So
Yes.
Actually, as an analyst, I cover project management software and to a smaller extent accounting software. But we have actually hundreds of categories of software, not only on getapp.com, but on GetApp's sister companies, Capterra and Software Advice. Those three sites all help small and mid-sized business owners choose the right software for their businesses. And we're all part of Gartner, which is a global research and advisory firm for the enterprise. And then within Gartner, and specifically within Gartner Research, the three of us are in a business unit that supports the SMB space.
Yep. Okay, so Gartner is the parent and has the large research and advisory for enterprise. And then there's the three the three companies kind of in the umbrella of Gartner, that one of them's GetApp and Software Advice, and what was the other one?
Capterra.
And so with GetApp, you gave these like verticals. You were looking at accounting and project management ones, which are actually both really important, especially PM, because project management is basically the way that you can push out what you're trying to build most effectively into existence and be able to effectively use time, which is the most valuable thing. That's huge. And then you said accounting, and what was the other one we were talking about?
So HR is the hypothetical example that I gave. And then within all three of those sister sites, we have research analysts who cover different priority markets that are unique to what they cover. So I don't actually cover HR software, but that's where the project management software coverage and accounting software coverage comes in. That's what I cover.
So give us some insight into how are things even analyzed? You said there's like a LinkedIn verified profile. So once I log into GetApp with my LinkedIn, then I'm verified. Mm-hmm. And then I can make comments on different software, enterprise software, with my thoughts on how I've had using it. But how do you know that I've used it, and how do you rank? What is it, like a 5-star ranking? And then it's like an overall, like 400 people have ranked the software. Its average is 4.5 stars. Is that kind of what it's like?
So there are averages in terms of a product's average rating based on what users say, and then the users are responsible for writing pros and cons of the tools that they are reviewing, and those reviews are attached to their LinkedIn profile, so there is a name attached to the review for accountability in order to make sure that those reviews are correct. And that's something that is hugely important to us, because we know how important software reviews are when people are making a big decision like buying software, because it's probably, hopefully, a one-time purchase that you won't have to make again, because shopping for software is very expensive and laborious. Yep. And we know that reviews play an important role in that software buying journey. So it's very important to us to make sure that those reviews have high quality and that people can trust them, because we live in an age where people, when they're buying software, they want to do a substantial amount of their own research before they ever actually talk to a vendor. And so we really try to facilitate that process and make it as seamless as we can.
Okay, so there's two parties at play here. There's both the clients that are looking for enterprise software to purchase, and then there's the enterprise software companies that are looking to provide awesome enterprise software. So then what would an enterprise software manufacturer or creator, what would they want to build out in their vertical? I mean, then there's different verticals. There's HR, there's accounting, there's all these different verticals that we were just talking about. But how can they best build out something that, I guess, what have you seen for the companies that have submitted a GetApp and that are being reviewed on there? What's the best user experience for their platform, as well as the people coming in that are their clients?
When we as analysts read user reviews of software products, regardless of which market we're covering, two big themes come up. One is ease of use, and the second is strong customer service. And so whether you're using a more technical tool or you're using something that is used to manage email marketing, regardless, we find that those are the two key things that people want from software. And those are especially important. They sound really basic, but it's actually not unheard of for people to buy software that, for example, is too big for their needs. And so that's a big part of what we do as analysts, is helping the readers choose what tool they need based on what their business needs are. Because as an example, if you are a freelancer and you need a great billing product, you probably don't need a tool with more features than that, especially because you're going to pay more. And so from the software vendor side, ease of use and strong customer service are both really important. And also on that note, having a clean interface is important.
Yes.
If people can't easily navigate the software, they're going to get frustrated really quickly.
That plays into the ease of use. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm in that category as well. I mean, even covering software myself, one would hope I'd have more patience to go through the nav and do all of that. But it's just natural that if you can't find something within a couple of seconds, your brain, like a light bulb goes off and you get frustrated. And so those are the two things that we see repeatedly as either pros or cons for vendors. And so I think those two things have to be well done before you move on to building out more extensive feature sets for your customers.
Yeah, so it's almost like for every single software company that's tuning in, that's building out SaaS, their software as a service, the ease of use and also the customer service or support needs to be ironed out first in your MVP, and especially the simplicity of use. Just the sheer, you can't have a customer that is trying to find something that can't find something. It's just got to be really simple and easy. Otherwise, that we've all felt it, that feeling, and then you're even after just a couple seconds, you're giving up because you're screw it, it's not easy enough.
Right.
I'm moving on.
Yes, and those are market agnostic recommendations, but something else I will say is that it's important to know how users are using your product and why they're using it. And project management software is a great example of that, because regardless of whether you have a software team that's working on more technical projects or you have a digital team and a creative agency that needs project management software, we have found at GetApp, doing research, that the vast majority of teams use project management software because they want to collaborate more effectively. So it's not necessarily going into the weeds. Certainly there are products that fulfill that need of going into the weeds, but it goes back to the bigger reason why people are using the tool. And we find that even when you have teams using a tool like Jira, for example, which is built for more technical project teams, the main reason they use it and the main benefit they see, by and large, is because they want to collaborate more effectively with their project teams. And so if you know as the vendor that the main reason people are using your product is to communicate more clearly and to collaborate better, then you can start building out feature sets that are more aligned with what your users need from the product. Yep.
Getting a constant feedback loop from your customers back to the engineers and designers. And then also, I feel with project management software, this is probably one of the most important software tools for companies, is project management software.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm biased because I cover that market, but it is hugely important because anything can be a project in theory. And I mean, in the case of a very small business, your business is probably the project, and you're going to have key milestones and deliverables, and you would have a backlog, and then you would use maybe a methodology like Agile to fulfill sprints and take things out of the backlog. So choosing the right project management software is hugely important if it's something you need. And there's a lot of nuance there, especially because the discipline of project management has changed so much. It has its roots really in software and developing software projects, but we see today that project management role is having much bigger business impact than before. And I think the rise of Agile is a big example of that, because Agile, again, it's a methodology that has its roots in software development, but now you see it being used in businesses of all sizes and in companies that do work that is not related to software projects and software development. And so,
what are they using it for?
I think they're using it by and large as a way to do more work faster. So the whole idea behind Agile is that you work in sprints that are shorter, and ideally there's a quick feedback loop which empowers you to put more work out there faster. And so I think that idea is appealing to people, especially small businesses, and there are restraints in terms of who Agile is best for, and instances where it doesn't work as well. It does tend to work really well if you have a small team that can respond to feedback quickly. And there are some hindrances. We've heard from some people on project teams in either a project management or PMO role that they don't like the daily stand-ups, for example, and they think that they take time away from building. And so there is some truth to that.
Daily stand-up in Agile.
Yeah, so part of Agile, it does involve having a daily stand-up with your team where you check in with each other and everybody gets on the same page about status updates before you go back to doing the work. And so sometimes that doesn't align with how certain people on project teams or how certain project leaders like to work. But again, I think it goes back to a main reason why people use project management software, which is to communicate and collaborate more effectively, because it's so easy these days to just get into the weeds of what you're doing without seeing the bigger picture. So hopefully you would use project management and project management software to get that big picture.
I think there's also an important role in just talking to the team, just in general, just emotional intelligence and being able to show people that you actually care about them and that you're wanting to build a relationship with them as you go through this, and kind of like, they care about what you care about, you care about what they care about, you have a same value or same ethic, and if you don't, then you talk about it and try and figure out all the variables about it. But then that sort of relationship, rather than just weather and sports and all the other stuff, it ties people closer together, having that first of the two. So I can see why also people are like, no, just get the work done. So Agile, so give me another example of an industry besides software, though, that people wouldn't think that PM tools are being used in.
I wrote a research report not that long ago for GetApp on the use of project management software among creative teams. So these would be teams within ad agencies, for example, like Ogilvy, who are using project management software to visualize their campaigns, see the big picture of, for example, a campaign, and then all of the steps that would have to be completed before it goes live, and also using the project management software with stakeholders. Ad work and creative work is another line of work where there are a lot of stakeholders involved, and stakeholder management is a key skill within project management. And so we did some research a few months ago to learn who on creative teams was using project management software and what they were using it for. And again, we did see that they were largely using it for collaboration and communication. And also in creative industries, it's very important to visualize your work. And so that's an example of where a methodology like Kanban and perhaps a project management software tool like Trello would be perhaps a good fit. And so again, it goes back to what you need it for, the software, and that should play a key role in what you look for when you're purchasing it. So if you need to visualize the work and you want to see it in a board framework, then using a tool like Trello, which is inspired by Kanban, would probably be a good fit. If you are primarily looking for task management and delegation, that's where a tool like Asana might be a good fit. If you want to manage software development projects, something like Jira would be a good fit. And so it really goes back to understanding what you need the software for, because Jira is a fabulous tool, but it's probably not the best software choice if you are a project manager in an ad agency.
Yeah, it's Jira for software development, and then Trello for all the board, kind of like the notes that you're pushing along to get done, and then Asana for, what was Asana for? Asana has many different use cases, but it excels really at task management and in designation, and so it's a good fit if that's your primarily. Does too, though.
A lot of software has task management. It's a very essential feature within software. So you're going to find that in many different tools that you look for. And it's important that project management software has task management features.
What else is really important for us to know about GetApp?
Yeah, I think what's important to know is that we are ideally a resource to not just help small business owners choose software when they need it, but also to be a space that will tell small and mid-sized business owners what they need to know about emerging technologies and how they impact small businesses. So we, as analysts, cover, for example, trends in many different verticals, including marketing and sales and accounting. Specifically, we talk about how emerging technologies play a role in what small and mid-sized business owners do. So as one example,
you just got a certificate from MIT in AI.
Yes.
So that's also something that SMBs are really looking at right now.
They are. So I got a certificate in AI for business strategy from MIT Sloan, which was a fantastic course that I highly recommend if viewers are interested in it. It was really great because you learn about machine learning, natural language processing, and robotics. So the course focuses on those three specific AI technologies. That in itself is important because we talk about AI as this monolithic thing when there's so much nuance to the different technologies within it. And so it focuses on those three technologies and then gives an overview of what they do. But then the core focus of the course is learning how to implement those technologies within businesses for them to solve problems. So for example, you could use robotics to standardize the customer experience by hopefully guaranteeing that customers will receive something by a certain date and time, and that impacts your differentiation strategy, because then you could do something that your competitors can't do. And so then when you get into the small and mid-sized business market, it gets challenging because a lot of these technologies do carry high risk, and then they also can be expensive to implement. And so a lot of times those aren't necessarily realistic for small and mid-sized business owners who are really short on budget. But we also do know from research we've done that small and mid-sized businesses are already using these technologies today. So as one example, we recently surveyed close to 700 small and mid-sized business owners in the US and asked them different questions related to emerging technologies. Within the construction segment of that group, we talked to 118 SMB construction owners. And we were surprised to learn that 1 in 3 of them said that they're either using AI and machine learning now, or they plan to within the next 1 to 2 years. Now, an additional 1 in 5 of that group said that they have no plans to even look at it, so there is a gap there. But then we did a little more digging into what does that look like? What does AI in construction management look like today? And we found two really surprising things. One is that there are already autonomous bricklayers and bulldozers being used by some construction sites today.
Whoa.
So Noah Reddy Campbell, who is a former Google engineer, founded a company called Built Robotics, which does supply autonomous construction products like bulldozers. And so he has been
Seems like something a little more sketchy to be autonomous, a bulldozer.
So he's been getting in VC investment. So someone likes the idea.
And bricklaying too makes sense. That's a repetitive task.
Yes.
As long as it's properly placed, makes sense.
And the thing I will say about the bulldozer is that it sounds very risky, but actually where we're at with robotics today, and this goes into self-driving cars, where we're at with the technology today, those sorts of autonomous vehicles will do well in highly controlled environments. So for example, if you have a golf cart and you want to use an autonomous golf cart to ride around a nursing home and do different things, there are actually several use cases where that sort of autonomous golf cart performs well because, again, it's a highly controlled environment. It's not going very quickly. You can program certain rules into it, and it's going to follow those rules. Now, the challenge is when you start adding external variables, AI isn't really good at understanding nuance yet. And so you introduce things like bad weather, and autonomous vehicles don't perform as well. So that's something to keep in mind. AI sensors at this stage don't recognize things like heavy rain, thunder, blizzards, and so then that does present a safety risk. And so going back to AI in construction, you have these autonomous products, and then there's a tendency for the media to hype people up thinking that they're going to get replaced by robots. And the other interesting aspect of this is that when we asked small and mid-sized business construction owners what their biggest challenge is, 45% said that hiring the right people is their biggest challenge. And then 35% said that implementing the right technologies was their challenge as well. And they were allowed to choose more than one challenge. So those were the two big ones. And so you could be tempted to think that because some of construction management is being automated, that it's a threat to jobs, but actually construction management job growth is actually well above average in the US, and there has been an increased amount of investment into the sector and a lot of jobs have been added, but fewer and fewer people are joining the construction sector. And so then it becomes a question of it's less about autonomous products taking construction workers' jobs and more about using these products to supplement human workers because there is a big labor shortage in U.S. construction. And so it's very one-sided to say that AI is going to take people's jobs because there's so much nuance to that statement that isn't necessarily correct in popular media as we hear it today.
Yeah, we're also going to gain a lot of new jobs, which is very exciting. It's also a big issue, though, because there's a lot of retraining that needs to happen for many jobs, and it's going to be a significant impact on the economy, and it's also not taking into account wealth inequality we talk about that a lot on the show. So I'll let that one settle for now. Maybe we can revisit it later. But something that you mentioned I think is really important to bring up is I think a lot of people, when they think about small and medium-sized businesses, that most people, when it comes to small and medium-sized businesses, including myself, I talk about this all the time, that one of the hardest parts about it is building a team of people that care about what you're doing as much as you do and that are as good at it as you are. And there's so many complex ways to be able to figure that out. But you actually made it clear that actually the technology, like what technology they end up implementing, what softwares they end up implementing in order to maximize success of their business is also something that's very, like almost equally kind of difficult. And I don't think we think about that as often.
No, and I think it's because I think the concept of buying software is so divorced from the human experience of using it and more specifically divorced from who uses it and why. So, for example, you might not think I need collaboration software, but you probably think I need a better way to communicate with my team. And so articulating the reasons why someone would use software is really important. And that feels like an obvious thing to say, but it's actually not. I think it's not as obvious as we think of it on either the buyer side or the vendor side at times. And so the vendors that do get it have a big advantage.
Yeah, and SMBs that get their software that optimizes their businesses faster get bigger advantages. Same thing with leveraging AI and all of the different nuances. Like you said, there's NLP, there's ML, there's a lot of different ways to leverage it for the success of your business. So the faster that you get on board, the more successful that you'll be. So it's really important to get people consulting as soon as possible. Like, go and do your research yourself, ask for people's help quickly, look at GetApp, places like GetApp, to go and see the different enterprise software ratings. And as you do that process of like coalescing all of this information and going through hopefully easy to use software with good customer support, then you'll be able to increase the amount of money you're making, increase customer satisfaction, increase efficiency in all your business processes. Something that I thought was interesting is you had previously done research on skills gaps in Taiwan and Brazil. Can you teach us about that?
Sure. So as a freelance reporter for news sites like The Guardian and The Next Web, I covered a variety of technical topics, including digital skills gaps in markets like Taiwan and Brazil. And that largely focused on access. When you look at those particular markets, a lot of it and a lot of my reporting was about access to not just digital skills, but digital itself, because there is a sizable part of the world where people don't have internet access. Actually, one of the talks today at the WITI Summit was about the skills gap with women worldwide, because an overwhelming majority of internet users globally are men, and women are really getting left behind, not just as tech makers, but as users of the technology. And so that was a big part of what I focused on when I was doing a report on digital skills gaps in Taiwan. There was a grassroots organization that would go around the island trying to bring these educational opportunities to people that were in more remote areas far from Taipei and other cities, so that they could at least experience the internet and then hopefully gain the skills that they needed. But I think we have a huge digital skills gap in the US as well. And I think a huge threat with AI that isn't discussed enough is the education threat, because we have such demand for jobs, but Element AI, which is a AI lab based in Montreal, estimates that there are only 22,000 people in the entire world right now who are qualified to research AI at a high level and therefore build it out. And if you contrast that really low number with the huge not only interest in AI, but demand for services, that right there is a huge problem. And the New York Times wrote a really fascinating feature last fall about the salaries of people who work in AI. And they talked about how even if you have a few years of experience, if you get in at the right company, you can easily be making $500,000 or more, because the skill set is that valuable in the market right now. The challenge is that a lot of professors at schools like Carnegie Mellon and Stanford will leave to go into the industry, and that's great, except then who's going to teach these students? Like, who's going to teach students how to build machine learning algorithms and become analysts who can help customers implement AI into their businesses? If there aren't people to teach these skills, that does present an enormous risk. And so if we don't find ways to consistently upskill people or help them retrain, like through initiatives like the MIT course, that is a huge challenge because, as I mentioned, we're all talking about AI, but 22,000 people out of how many people in this world are only able to really do it per se right now?
Yes. Yeah. This is in such high demand that there's a struggle between universities and industry to take the individuals, and there's these bidding wars going on between industry as well. It's very ridiculous. It's crazy, and let's train more people to care about and learn about it, and equalize out the opportunity for people to get trained in it. Okay, so I think we'll end up circling to what we didn't get to, which we'll get to now, and I'll kind of layer that question in to what you were talking about regarding socioeconomics and just being able to get the opportunity out to more people, no matter what income level they're at, no matter if they're a female, if they're a young girl, or if they are a person of color across the world, whatever that may be. Through all of those variables, how do we increase the amount of opportunity out for everybody on the planet? Here we are at WITI. Like, how do we empower different people from around the world?
It's a really complicated question. Do you mean in terms of using, digital tools like the internet, or in terms of helping give people the skills to join the tech sector and help build it?
I'd say probably both. Yeah.
Both. Well, so I'm not a development expert, so I can't speak to that aspect of it. I think a few things have to happen. The first is that we need to prioritize coding at an earlier age. I think kids in preschool should be taught the basics of coding, just like they're taught the basics of early math and reading, because the skill set is that important. I mean, even in what I do as a business analyst.
Scratch?
No, I haven't.
MIT's programming language?
No.
And Microsoft works with it too. Scratch, like kids can just really, it's like block-based coding for kids.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
And I think, because the thing is in terms of talking about, for let's say, the gender gap in technology, it's not even that I didn't want to join the technology sector when I was in middle school and high school. I didn't even think it was an option because nobody told me it was an option. And I think that's an example of how far we've come even in the last decade, because I just finished serving as a mentor to Girls in Technology's Maryland chapter. So it's a program for high school girls in grades 9 to 12 to meet with mentors once a month and talk about anything from barriers in the industry to what they're going through trying to search for colleges and finding the right colleges to fulfill their majors and things like that. The fact that that program exists is a big thing, because there was nothing like that when I was their age, and I was not their age that long ago.
Or women in tech?
That particular program is called Girls in Technology.
Girls in Technology, cool.
Yeah, there are many of them.
And there's chapters across the U.S.?
I believe so, yeah. I was involved with the Maryland chapter, and there are many, there's Girls Who Code. There are a lot more initiatives like that, and that's very different than even a decade ago. So that is a sign of progress, in my opinion. The other thing that I think we need to do in terms of helping women and anybody of minority status join the tech industry is to show the range of skills that are needed. So we absolutely need more engineers, because there is an enormous need for people. And so we definitely need to get as many women and people of color and what have you into those technical roles, for sure. But we also need people with sociology degrees to design user interfaces for voice-first technology, because engineers are not the best people to actually script those conversations. And so there's a range of technology careers available to people that have more of a liberal arts orientation, and that is not discussed, in my opinion, nearly as often enough. And so educating all students and saying tech is for you, that if you want it to be, that is a huge part of it as well.
And here's the opportunity. And here's the right mentors. You see it, you can be it. All of that. That's been a reoccurring theme of what we've been talking about, and it feels so right. Like, I love the idea of getting this out, and there's so many organizations like you listed that are already doing it that we need to just continue empowering, and that's why we're here at WITI. Question about, let's run you through a couple of last ones. What do you think is the most beautiful thing in the world?
Oh, I would say broadly, traveling to a new place and experiencing it for the first time. So that, again, that's a broad one. In terms of like what touches me, I'm a words of affirmation person. So getting that from someone I love is probably the most beautiful thing in the world.
Yeah. Just that feeling is, I don't even know. It's so hard to put words onto it, but it's just full body affirmation, full body validation. Like you're being valued by somebody, and you're hearing that from them. Like, that feels so incredible.
It does.
Yeah. It's almost like we need to do more of that as a civilization. Like, we were just recently listening to Joe Rogan talking to Tom Segura, and they were on tour for a long time, and they had never talked to each other vulnerably about how much they appreciated each other. And it took them a couple drinks for them to finally be like crying a bit and being like, I love you, like, thank you for everything and stuff. And I just thought that that's so interesting, because otherwise you're just saying like, thank you, I appreciate it. But like, when are you actually getting super emotional about it and telling the person like from your soul, like, really? So I just thought that was an interesting comparison. What you said was the most beautiful thing in the world. What do you think about us being alone in the cosmos?
I don't think we are, but I don't have enough knowledge to really build that out further, if that makes sense. But I don't think we're alone in the cosmos.
And then, do you think we're in a simulation?
No, but I do think it feels like we're living in a bad line of code, and we need an engineer to fix it. It feels that way. I mean, it feels like we're living in some really buggy code right now, and someone just checked out and was like, "I'm gonna go away for a little while. Bye."
It's funny. It's like when we talk about simulation theory, we talk about all of the variables that are being calculated at the same time. That once all these rocks are orbiting stars that have all these civilizations roaming on them. It's like the ultimate experiment, just to observe and see what happens. And so when you take into account this, like a couple buggy lines of code, faulty lines of code, the person that was coding stepped away for a bit just to see what would unfold. There are all these different types
or they put the wrong letter in or the wrong variable in. And I mean, because that's the thing about coding, right? It's one little mistake can ruin the whole thing. So and so it does feel like we're a little too close for comfort to that right now, but overall, so yes, I think it feels like we're living in a bit of a simulation right now. But it's also interesting from a tech perspective, because it goes back to consumer knowledge and consumer trust in these apps. So something I started noticing, I was actually talking about the simulation theory with two of my friends, and we then started talking about something else, and I didn't have my phone out, but I started getting targeted ads that were related to what we had discussed within a few days. And I said to myself and to them, I didn't have my phone out. I wasn't Googling for that. How am I getting sponsored ads in Instagram for this thing we discussed? And then what I've since learned is that a lot of these apps have the microphone automatically turned on, and you have to go in and turn it off. So when we talk about...
Okay, Google. There it goes. Just like that, the mic just turned on right there. Or it was listening, waiting for me to say those words.
Yeah, and so that, but I think that's a different example, I would say, just because you expect to use Google and Alexa to give you answers, but you don't expect a lot of other apps to be listening to you. And so,
especially when your phone's off and away, or it's just the screen's off, it's locked and it's away.
Exactly.
I wonder how often people experience that targeted ad when they didn't search for the thing. Maybe you search for it on the web. Maybe you search for it in a different, not on mobile.
So that's what I always think, because it's easy enough to think, okay, there's a digital footprint of me searching for something, so that's why I'm getting targeted ads.
Yes.
That's simple enough. But then again, when the digital world gives you signs that it was hearing what you were doing when you were offline, that's when it gets a little creepy.
A little simulation-y.
It does. And I didn't know that about the mics automatically being turned on. And that's an example of where it's something that has a lot, in theory, a logical explanation, but it's certainly not the first explanation I thought of. And so then I was sitting there thinking, who's watching me? Like, how did they know?
Watching you through the field of atoms even further. Through what is not even visible in the third dimension, what's outside of it. This the end of privacy, and hopefully it's for the benefit of humanity, for transparency and for security and for collaboration. Hopefully, can also be for very dystopic reasons.
And I think from the consumer side, we all have to take more responsibility about what we're using. So I have a friend who made a conscious choice not to be on Facebook, Instagram, or WhatsApp because she wanted to get out of that ecosystem. And first of all, it's not that easy to get out of that ecosystem for various reasons. One of which is she travels abroad for work constantly. She's in South Africa right now. And anybody who has friends or family abroad knows how important WhatsApp is. And so that's an example of where to not be on the platform is something I can't imagine.
Now there's Signal and Telegram and WeChat and there's so many of these services now that are enabling people to send messages in encrypted ways, but you got to know that is that actually encrypted? Is it actually trusted? Is your data going to third parties for development facilitation? Mm-hmm. Like there's so much nuance to this.
And it does make me wonder, I think there was such an explosion of apps and digital tools before people started really deep diving into these privacy implications, and it does make me wonder if we're going to see that recede a little bit, because I think consumers are in the next 5 years going to start asking more questions about their data and how it's being used before they download something. And it does typically take something pretty catastrophic like Facebook's Cambridge Analytica scandal for people
GDPR
to really consider that. Yeah. And someone was saying at WITI yesterday that we're going to see GDPR is just the beginning. I mean, this is the start of the new normal, because people want to know how their data is being used, but that is also very market specific. So consumers have a lot more rights in the tech world in Europe. Google's right to be forgotten rule is one example.
What is that again?
So the right to be forgotten is the idea that if there is a web result about myself that I don't like and I live in Germany, I could contact Google and submit basically a request to get that result deleted from
search.
From search, yes. And that is not something at the moment that is available to users in the US. And so it goes back to cultural norms and values.
Right to be forgotten.
Yeah, and
cool.
And so, but you look at the EU, which is a more heavily regulated body by and large than the US, and so then political nuance comes into play, social norms come into play, and so it's a very complicated issue. But by and large, I think people are going to start caring more about what they download.
Yeah, Lauren, this has been a very good conversation across a couple different really important topics that I think now, after talking about, makes me feel like I'm more educated about it, and hopefully other people are as well.
I hope so as well. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show, Lauren. Much appreciated. We have had a good amount of conversation about this app market for software, the importance of knowing what's right for your small, medium-sized business, the importance of getting in early and testing it out and seeing how it's going for you, so that you can stay at the edge of what's going on in the world. So go check out GetApp, the link's in the bio. Also share the content with other people, get them talking about this type of stuff. And also join us, subscribe to the channel, give us a comment below, join us on Patreon so we can continue doing cool things like coming around to great places like WITI and highlighting brilliant leaders from around the world. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and we'll catch you soon.